In this video, I want to talk to you how you as a man should protect yourself at work, right? Lots of times people are at work and, they get exploited, particularly men, because, you need to protect yourself from the dangers of coworkers who might want to cancel you for having the wrong opinion. We have a lot of feminist kind of Me Too, Believe All Woman, cancel culture, specifically against men. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you how to dodge some of those landmines. This will help you avoid getting cancelled, avoid the HR traps, workplace allegations, and this is what no one is actually telling you in the corporate environment. Maybe you're at work, you have a corporate mentor, but they're not going to tell you about some of these particular points about staying safe from false claims at work. Now, firstly, I want to talk you through this particular headline: police asking prosecutors to consider charging Russell Brand over SA claims, and also Rumble rejecting the MP's disturbing letter over Russell Brand's income. So let's go through it in a bit of detail, right? So we've got this particular news article where the police are looking to investigate him. So what happened with Russell Brand? Now, Russell Brand was a public figure. He was part of the In Club at Hollywood in a relationship with Katy Perry and things like that. And that what ended up happening over time was that he started expressing the opinions on public platforms such as YouTube, and they were politically incorrect over time. Initially, when he was more socialist, more leftist leaning, there were no issues. But the moment he started leaning more right, being more sympathetic to maybe someone like a Candace Owens, more conservative talking points, Trump, more pro-freedom, and he could see through a lot of the lies, then all of a sudden he started getting cancel culture coming for him, and all of a sudden women from decades ago started accusing him of things, which is kind of a key point of what I'm mentioning here. The system can weaponize any instance that you had, any interaction you had with a female co-worker, maybe from several years ago, because all of a sudden you're doing something now that runs counter to their narrative. And this can happen in the corporate environment, same way if you're a public figure. So let's go through a bit of the timeline here, right? So in 2023, Russell Brand faced major allegations for misconduct in reference to women, leading to professional and personal ramifications. In September the 15th, 2023, he started denying allegations that he heard rumors were coming out. And he said his relationships were consensual. Also, after that, on the day later, on September the 16th, there was a joint investigation. Again, the media attacking him. The media is weaponized, to push the government's agendas. In this case, it would be like anti-right-wing agendas, right? So the Sunday Times, the Times, Channel 4, which is like a major investigative news show that they do called Dispatches, they had accusations from 4 women saying that he assaulted them between 2016 and 2013, right? So over a decade ago, 10 to 15 years ago, these women are coming up all of a sudden now accusing him of things, right? Now, I'm sure if he was a leftist, if he was in the good books of the establishment, they wouldn't come and do this wild investigation with all these media companies collaborating to portray him in a negative way. So then after that, he's continued getting other reports that the police were going to be investigating him for an instance 2 decades ago. So this happened in 2023. Some of the accusations go back to 2003, so 2 decades ago, right? Now, he continued to want to pursue his career, but then he postponed some of his comedy tour dates. So again, this is really impacting his income ability. And then also the talent agency, Tavistock Wood, they terminated the relationship with him. So all of a sudden, he's losing tons of money. And as you can imagine, of course, you want to earn an income. He probably is a multimillionaire, but no matter how much money you have, you want to continue to earn to make money. And then this is really impacting his ability to earn a livelihood, right? He's can't do his comedy tour. His talent agency, which is going to manage a lot of his opportunities, are refusing to work with him. So this is the type of ridiculous scenario you might be caught up in just for having a politically incorrect opinion. And then on top of that, you can imagine, if you're planning ahead your expenses for the year, you've got a comedy tour coming up, you've got a talent agency that's probably discussing future opportunities after that, then all of a sudden, you lose those opportunities. You've got to plan ahead and budget. How am I going to pay my bills for the next year if you have a lot of opportunities that are completely disappearing? And then a couple of days later, the YouTube suspended his monetization, so he couldn't make money on YouTube due to these allegations, and it impacted his online revenue streams. So from September the 15th to the 19th in 2023, so just about a week, he basically lost his comedy tour, lost his talent agency, lost his YouTube monetization, had all these false allegations going back 10, 15, 20 years. They destroyed him in a week, and this is how they basically run things, right? Now, what's quite interesting here, and to show you how this is a targeted impact from this establishment, the government, the Hollywood talent agencies, the media, they all collaborate, right? So shortly around this time, right, on the 21st of September, essentially we had a public letter, well, a letter that was private that was publicly published by an alternative to YouTube called Rumble. And what ended up happening is the UK MP, Dame Carolyn Dindage, again, you know, the demographic that always gets overlooked, you know, she's an AWFL. She's an affluent white female liberal. You know, people want to be critical, and I think there's fair criticism to be made around certain demographics doing crime, certain demographics being migrants coming across the border and not contributing to a society. But the one demographic that comes up again and again, and it's a demographic in this instance, the woman, the politician who wrote a letter to tell Rumble not to pay Russell Brand for producing content on the platform. She's an AWFL, affluent white female liberal. This is time and time and time again, right? And I don't know if it's, I'm trying to say this nicely, men in the West being weak or whatever, but they never want to hold white women accountable or affluent white female liberals accountable for the way they conduct themselves in corporate environments, in politics, consistently against free speech, against free expression, demonizing men, emasculating men, and always getting away with it. And, you know, I had enough of that demographic, and I don't want to work in an environment around them, right? Because a lot of the times they do play this type of insidious passive-aggressive control culture game and cancel culture game. So she particularly asked platforms Rumble, TikTok, Twitter or X to suspend Russell Brand from his ability to monetize content following his allegations of assault. And then Rumble rejected the request, said it was disturbing, saying they can't control all his income streams and tried to destroy him, saying that they were committed to free speech and essentially wanted to defend him, Russell Brand, and content creators and say, you're not going to, a government can't send a letter to a private company and say, don't pay this individual for making content. It's completely ridiculous. Then YouTube, like I say, demonetized him. TikTok said he was not part of their funding when they fund creators. They weren't part of the creator funds, things like that. And then legally developments, you know, police are continuing this investigation. There's still things going on throughout 2023, throughout 2024. Rumble say they oppose cancel culture, but and then you've got this particular government organization, Hydrant, still investigating things into Russell Brand, right? He's been part of police investigations that are investigating Russell Brand, asking him tons of questions. The various Crown Prosecution Service, the police service in the UK are really cracking down on him, trying to essentially destroy him, right? And as of now, they look like they might be for future court proceedings. He might get dragged into court based on accusations from, like I say, over a decade ago. Now, this is what it does, right? Even if this guy's a multimillionaire, and I want to give you a bit of context before I play this clip. Right, Russell Brand, if you're not aware, he's a very popular public figure for many years. Not so much now. He's just online. He's not on part of mainstream media. But for many, I would say for like a decade there, consistently, he was always portrayed in the media in a very positive way as a fun, flamboyant guy who all the women liked, right? There were stories out there that he'd slept with 1,000 women. The media would run with these stories. I think he had autobiography or stories like that. He'd be part of late night talk shows. He was very popular, right? And all women, and I would say primarily middle-aged white women, would be quite supportive of him because they maybe either they were attracted to him or they thought he was like a popular guy. But then what ended up happening is, like, the more, like I say, he leans right, he basically was attacked by them one way or shape or form. The kind of culture turned against him, at least mainstream normie NPC culture that is quite leftist, socialist and things like that, because all of a sudden he wasn't parroting the right narratives. And it really goes to show how the system can completely flick a switch and guy can go from the popular guy to saying something unpopular, and then they try to ruin his life. And this is what you can see in this culture. So if you, I'm used to seeing this guy in relatively confident conduct. It really shows how this system can really break you down to the point where you start questioning your life decisions. The system gaslights you into thinking that things you didn't do were inappropriate. And this can exist in the corporate culture too, which we'll come on to in a moment. But let's listen to his apology and see how the system really put him in a complete state of fear that they were going to lock him up based on false allegations.
Extremely disturbing letters, or a letter and an email, one from a mainstream media TV company, one from a newspaper, listing a litany of extremely egregious and aggressive attacks, as well as some pretty stupid stuff like my community festival should be stopped, that I shouldn't be able to attack mainstream media narratives on this channel. But amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. These allegations pertain to the time when I was working in the mainstream, when I was in the newspapers all the time, when I was in the movies, and as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play? Particularly when we've seen coordinated media attacks before, like with Joe Rogan when he dared to take a medicine that the mainstream media didn't approve of. And we saw a spate of headlines from media outlets across the world using the same language. I'm aware that you guys have been saying in the comments for a while, watch out, Russell, they're coming for you, you're getting too close to the truth. Russell Brand did not kill himself. I know that a year ago there was a spate of articles, Russell Brand's a conspiracy theorist, Russell Brand's right wing. I'm aware of news media making phone calls, sending letters to people I know for ages and ages. It's been clear to me, or at least it feels to me, like there's a serious and concerted agenda to control these kind of spaces and these kind of voices. And I mean my voice along with your voice. I don't mind them using my books and my stand-up to talk about my promiscuous consensual conduct in the past. What I seriously refute are these very, very serious criminal allegations. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are witnesses whose evidence directly contradicts the narratives that these two mainstream media outlets are trying to construct, apparently in what seems to me to be a coordinated attack. Now, I don't want to get into this any further because of the serious nature of the allegations, but I feel like I'm being attacked, and plainly they are working very closely together.
So you see, he's got a correct assessment here. He's went from a left-wing socialist for a long time, no issues. All of a sudden, they're bringing up his promiscuous past. And this is something I'd caution all of you. You know, if you're a man and you're a public figure and you're popular, or even if you're popular at the office and female co-workers are particularly maybe comfortable with you, they might be comfortable making certain jokes that they might not make with other male employees, never discount the fact that they can always turn that against you. I've seen instances of that in the office. A woman can turn anything from a joke to a harassment overnight, right? And it doesn't pay off long term for a man, you know, being promiscuous. And I would recommend, if you are doing that, you keep it quiet, because you never know. A couple women can get together, accuse you of something, and all of a sudden one woman's allegations might not be taken seriously, but 4 or 5 of them, even if it's malicious and not true, that will be taken seriously. And you can be in a rich position, wealthy position like Russell Brand, but you end up groveling, right? His life is crashing down, and not only is it crashing down in a sense, even though he's sure I'm still got a lot of money and a very relatively comfortable life, but these things get dragged out. So that was back in 2023. Up to 2025, there could be further legal proceedings. He's always got to deal with that daily stress of, oh my God, he might have to face a jail sentence on the basis of false allegations. So what are the key 3 lessons we can learn from Russell Brand's situation? Firstly, try to avoid risky behavior, right? Risky behavior, like I say, being promiscuous, controversial personal choices can have long-term consequences, regardless of how wealthy or famous or popular you are in the office. You should prioritize meaningful relationships outside of work, and that's how you can get your personal relationship fulfillment and not engage in that at work. Avoid kind of short-term gratification, thinking, you know, making a joke about a female co-worker could be funny in the moment and then it backfires a week later when she tells HR or something like that. And always safeguard your reputation to avoid future repercussions for having a different opinion. And be mindful of political and public opinion shifting, right? Whether it's left or right, you make you a target, right? You want to maintain your professionalism, and tying your kind of work brand to your personal opinion, maybe that you support Trump, it can often backfire, right? And all these contentious political and cultural issues are kind of common coming up throughout society, so try to kind of be neutral or avoid that, right? Now, protect your career and reputation. Documenting interactions in today's environment, allegations, even without proof, can derail your career. Document your interactions with female co-workers or co-workers in general. Be cautious in social settings. Avoid behavior that could be misconstrued or weaponized against you, right? Now, the Russell Brand's case, as it says on the screen, they can highlight how accusations alone can destroy a man's reputation, career, and his opportunities, right? And it reflects a growing culture where public opinion, cancel culture, can override due process. They can turn personal allegations into tools to silence controversial figures and people who are trying to gain power, right? Now, the next instance I want to talk through is Brett Kavanaugh and the innocence of white jocks, which is kind of an interesting headline, right? And again, I want to focus on this demographic that has incredible power in the corporate environment and in culture. Now, who's kind of attacking Brett Kavanaugh here? If you're not aware of him, he was a lawyer who worked throughout his career, again, in legal roles, and he was running for Supreme Court, which is kind of a very senior government legal role in America. And then all of a sudden, a woman from 35 years ago started accusing him of things, right? And he had to go through a really dragged out lawsuit. All the media was attacking him and saying he's a bad person. There was a lack of evidence. He ended up, beating the case, effectively becoming the member of the Supreme Court, so having that kind of senior role as a conservative judge, essentially, right? So, and the thing is, the FBI did all this investigation into him, dragged out his personal life, really, like I said, tried to destroy him. And who's this demographic who's attacking him, right? It's not these people might be critical of BLM or one group or the other, like I say, migrants, things like that. But who's the demographic? It's an AWFL, Lauren Collins, Brett Kavanaugh, and the innocence of white jocks. Like, what is up with this demographic of AWFLs, affluent white female liberals, attacking men or attacking white men? And you would think that maybe they would realize that maybe these white men are somehow building a civilization that they live in quite comfortably, or kind of would protect them in a lot of these situations where maybe other demographics are getting fed up with them. You think they'd have some kind of level of self-awareness, but you see this time and time again, right? And then this is what ends up occurring in a lot of these instances. We have this type of timeline that I want to go through here. So let's go through this in a bit of detail. So firstly, in July 2018, he was nominated for the Supreme Court by Donald Trump, and this led to a kind of internal process within the Senate. By September, this Dianne Feinstein said that she received a letter from a woman accusing Brett Kavanaugh. The woman accusing him was Christine Blasey Ford, and this was accusing him of something in the 1980s. So this is 2018, and she's accusing him of something in the 1980s, that he did something inappropriate to her. She goes to the Washington Post, details her allegations. Then, she testifies before the Senate committee, accusing him of assault from like back in the 1980s, had this emotional outburst, and then accusing Kavanaugh of all these type of things. The Democrats were kind of smearing him in a negative way. And then you have these Republicans that were kind of saying, well, we need to investigate this guy now. Maybe he's done something wrong. They did this investigation with the feds, the FBI. Eventually, he beat the case. There was a lack of evidence, and he won, and he got his job. Now, what you need to do is trying to think through this, because this guy, like I say, is a highly accomplished lawyer. I'm sure some of you watching this are in the legal industry, or you work with lawyers, and this guy, is someone who dedicate their entire life and their entire profession to trying to progress their life in a positive way, but they are viciously attacked because they're a misogynist, or they have the wrong opinion, they're conservative or Republican. And you can see in the second headline I have here, which is from the New York Magazine, and it says, Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump, and the misogyny plot. And again, this is all about emotions and how certain feminists might feel about these men. It's nothing to do with fact. There is no real fact here, right? It's saying there was a cover-up. In look at the date here. This is October 2024. So even though these guys beat the case back in 2018, it's 2024 now, and it's 2025 now, and essentially, they're still going on about this. It's like, this guy beat the case, he bust case. So, like, just let him move forward with his life. So, now next we have this past surface, right? So, past resurfacing. Now, when you're at critical moments in your career, maybe you're just about to make it to managing director, get promoted to partner, things like that. All of a sudden, maybe that female co-worker you had from 5 years ago at the company, she's jealous, she wants to accuse you of something, she goes to HR to destroy your reputation. And this can happen, right? It's not that uncommon. And it's not just if you're a public figure like Brett Kavanaugh or Russell Brand. So always be mindful of your actions and how it can impact your life decades in the future. You could be scrutinized during just before making a major career milestone when you dedicated your life to that, especially in high profile roles. Maintain integrity and professionalism as much as possible to avoid those risks and avoid kind of compromising social situations. And then the second point is around public scrutiny of leaders, right? So just keep your options open, right? If you're a high profile person, even in a company, there's more scrutiny, right? There's more likelihood that maybe, say you're a man in your mid 40s and you have a senior role and a female co-worker spends some time in your office and then later she accuses you of something. You've got to be on guard for these type of attacks and this type of manipulative game they can play politically or socially to destroy your reputation. Then also consider about kind of being more resilient, having a support system, having co-workers that have a good reputation of you and would provide positive feedback if you are falsely accused, so you can avoid public and professional challenges. It's also important to have kind of transparency and document all the relevant essential interactions you have with people, because if you have maybe one instance where you're accused of something but your general record of interaction with someone through emails, through instant messaging were generally positive, then it seems a bit unusual if all of a sudden they accuse you of something, particularly if it occurred several decades ago. And if you're not aware, many companies, particularly finance companies in the West, in the UK, US, countries like that, they would have to maintain records of all communications going back around 5 years, and they have like data centers to kind of maintain even older than that some of the communications. So if you're accused of something in certain industries, typically there's communication going back several years in your email inbox, even things like that. So you'd be able to keep record of certain things if you are accused unfairly after several years. And then if you build and maintain a good reputation of being honest and reliable and careful with co-workers, this will be a buffer against kind of allegations, right? Now, what did this situation kind of lead to, right? So it led to a lot of difficult situations here for Brett Kavanaugh, right? Firstly, it led to a free fall against common sense. Now, common sense, intellectual honesty, decency, even laws, due process, there was no presumption of evidence, right? Because he was a public figure. This was back in 2018 when particularly it was bad to say you support Trump. There was no presumption that he was innocent. It was not before proven guilty, even though, like I say, lack of evidence to prove wasn't taken into account. Even, all these years later, 6-7 years later, they're still making smear campaigns of this guy, and this is the thing, drinking with a female, taking one 35 years ago can be used against you now. Now, this culture has in the West, even now, even though you might see a slight pushback against political correctness, the woke ideology, ESG, things like that, DEI, there's still, these are things that you see some aspects where they're stepping back from that, and I'll cover this in future videos, but day-to-day life hasn't really changed. You still could be cancelled for saying publicly you support Trump, right? In many cases you still could be cancelled for making one slight comment about unfair bias in favor of women over men, right? And this culture still has, and I don't see anything really pushing back against it without it taking a lot of more time, a lot more real strength from men, let's just put it that way, pushing against this type of culture. And this culture still has blind faith in women. It still has a believe all woman culture. If you're accused of something at work today, just because might see the red pill or Kevin Samuels or people like that, if you're accused of something at work today, you're still going to be still mainstream normie NPC culture is still going to attack you unfairly as a man, right? So you have a mob culture in the office, in the corporate environment, right? They're still driven by emotions, not logic. Still agenda politics, bias in favor of women against men, and a lot of these things are based on hate and not reality, and not law, not ethics. And this is linked to like a broader trend of tyranny, oppression, and censorship based on feelings, not facts, right? And the official narrative still hasn't changed, right? As you can see here, right? The establishment's going to lie. They can create all sorts of narrative against someone who's a multimillionaire or an accomplished lawyer like Brett Kavanaugh or Russell Brand, as we saw earlier. And it really doesn't really help prevent or protect you, right? Even if you have the president, Brett Kavanaugh, and then he was viciously attacked, and they still had to deal with the media smears. Trump couldn't make a quick phone call to Ari Emanuel or one of these other guys and say, okay, well, let's shut down this type of negative coverage on Brett Kavanaugh. That wasn't gonna work, right? And this is the thing. The way the system currently works, due to its feminist bias, it can stop men from reaching the pinnacle of their career, as you can see in this guy who ended up getting to Supreme Court. But it's so vicious on the basis of a lie from 35 years ago. This is the type of things you have to deal with. Society's really weaponized women to hate men in many cases. Not saying they're all like that, but that's how the general dynamic works. The political power, the financial gain, easier lives, these are all the motives for false allegations. The preferential treatment and attention they might get, constant life ruination tactics, opportunistic destruction of many men in powerful positions is the name of the game in this current society. So just to finish up there, right? So, like I say, it shows you how important principles like fairness were kind of ignored, and it reveals a culture trend where emotions, gender politics, group pressure, the mob tactics can stop men from succeeding when it comes to them wanting power and attention. So sometimes to succeed in this game, you have to understand the environment you're in. You have to be playing on defense, right? And let's think about this whole concept of playing on defense in a bit of detail here. So when it comes to understanding the environment you're in, there is a bit of a biased power structure. The system, the society, your management is ran by different words I'm going to use here, different phrases. So one is IYI. If you're not familiar with the term IYI, it's intellectual yet idiot. Now, Nassim Taleb, who wrote a book, you've probably heard of a book called Anti-Fragile or Skin in the Game. I'm sure in many cases it'd be Anti-Fragile, which is just about essentially kind of building your life in a resilient way, so you're not impacted by all of a sudden there's a change like a layoff or you lose some money. You're anti-fragile. You've built your life in a very way of diversifying your risk, right? But he came up with another phrase called IYI, intellectual yet idiot. Now, what is an intellectual yet idiot? It's essentially a person who is an intellectual, they have a master's or PhD or something like that, and they just believe the system blindly, even when the system's wrong. And you see how many cases in this society of the system being wrong, what's going on in 2020, giving you incorrect health and medical advice. People who are wrong, the people during the last few years who said inflation's not going up because some kind of dumb finance expert who has all the right qualifications did some calculations and said, oh, things aren't as bad as you think it is in the economy, even though your day-to-day life you're dealing with drastic inflation in your living costs. That's a typical case of IYI, experts who just follow the official narrative without thinking for themselves. Then you also have a biased power structure where there's not just idiots in positions of power over you, NPCs, normies, in this managerial state, this middle management kind of dumb people who rule over you and enforce biased rules and pretend that it's fair. You also have bio-Leninism, which is something I recommend you look into. Bio-Leninism is just the idea that the weak and the dumb are ruling over the strong and the smart. So you have people with poor morals, poor ability, ruling over people who are smarter than them. And this is a common thing you see all the time. So it's important to understand this perspective and understand their perspective will always be biased. Then you've got sensitive Susies. These are hypersensitive co-workers. They're trained to be offended. Even if you say something like, oh, you guys, when you're at work, you're referring to a team. Oh, you guys, can you do this? Even using the word guys, when there's female co-workers, they're going to stand up and act like they're beating the gender glass ceiling and saying, don't say guys, you should say guys and gals. You should say boys and girls or men and women. You can't just say guys as a general phrase. It's completely ridiculous, right? Now, blaming all men for the actions of a few is just typically the way they act. They want something to get upset about. Next, you have educational radicalization. Now, we know gender studies, diversity courses, sociology, certain extent psychology, even English literature and other liberal arts. Some of these degrees, they have, covering books and content that is quite anti-male. So these people have been indoctrinated from a young age. That's why they'll be more likely to judge you when you are in the work environment as a man. Then you've got professions with higher percentage of radicalization. So if you work in industries like teachers, counselors, social workers, governments, non-profit NGOs, those are going to have more of the leftist leaning type of jobs. And if you're in there, you have to be aware of that, tiptoe around that, or perhaps consider a career shift. Now, anything can be deemed hostile to the work environment, right? So even personal life decisions. So relationships with gender roles, If you mention that maybe you have a gender roles in your personal relationship, female co-workers might see you as a misogynist. If you have different political views, which we discussed earlier, being more right-wing leaning is an issue. Even watching TV shows or things that might be deemed somewhat politically incorrect, watching Fox News, things like that. And then even I remember a funny instance where there was a advert for Peloton. At-home bicycles, those bicycles you can, cycle bikes you can use for exercise bikes, right? There was an advert where it was a man who was buying it for his wife, and then the female co-workers made such a big deal about it. It was around Christmas time a few years ago. Oh, I'm so upset about this particular instance. Oh, men are so misogynist, blah 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 blah. They're telling women to lose weight, and it's like so ridiculous. You have to listen to all this type of narrative at work, right? You just have to understand that anything can be deemed hostile in this type of environment. So you have to really be on guard for how they can really attack you for just a small comment. Now, identifying and avoiding risks. I want you to look for signs of leftist policies, right? You've got people who are weekend activists, who are, social justice warriors. If you're at work with a co-worker and they're constantly spending their weekends protesting about one cause or the other, they've always got what I call protest panderer type of personality. I remember dealing with some of them at university, a couple at work too, where whatever the issue is, they're protesting one way or the other, right? And it's like, what is going on in your life, in your personal life, or even in the way you manage your own personal time, that you're always upset about one thing or another. Another point is around body positivity. Now, I mean, key things to look out for that we see in this society is women who brightly color their hair. They brightly color their hair red, green, blue, neon blue, things like that. I'm not saying they're all like this, but there is a parallel between humans and animals in this sense, where the general view and behaviors of some of these people, it's like a wild animal having bright colors. It's normally to warn against you approaching them. People who have many tattoos, people who might be visually repulsive, people who have the Rachel Maddow look, the short hair, female feminist, serious face feminist type of look, dressing like a man in a suit, a lack of femininity. If a woman is conducting herself like a man more than a female, if she's more focused on being an activist, being focused on her career, no real personal life or healthy relationships or outside of that, or focus on being a consumer too, who's constantly obsessed with buying the latest shoes, the latest handbags, it's not normally, that's not normally a sign of good character, of good values or virtue. And then another thing to look out for is people who are constantly medicated. They're always dealing with some mental health issue or the other. There was a 2010 study that showed 1/4 of women in the US are on some form of mental health medication for anxiety or depression. And I'm not saying mental health isn't an issue, because it is, or that medication can't help some people in their circumstances, but a lot of the times if people are perpetually on medication, potentially having emotional outbursts, is someone you need to kind of keep a distance from, because they might paint you as a victim and go to HR and try to ruin your career. Another instance is reckless behavior. If you're dealing with party girls, they're always partying, sleeping around. They think the laws, the morals don't apply to them. Drama queens who constantly need drama and gossip, attention seekers. That's something else to be careful and to look out for, right? Another thing is social media searches. If you're working with co-workers on a team and someone seems a bit suspect, you can do a quick search for them on LinkedIn. They're constantly job hopping every year. It might be a sign that they're not good at the job, or they're just difficult to deal with. If they're saying extreme things on Twitter or on Facebook, that could be another thing to look out for. So you can do a quick search if you're suspect of someone's personality. Next thing we're going to talk about is mitigating the risks at work, right? Limiting risk. Don't get dragged into sensitive political discussions, gender-based discussions. Don't lose your career, income, reputation, or other aspects of your life on the basis of a small little comment you can make. So limit your risk as much as you can, who you're engaging with, who you're talking more with, who you're not talking more with. End of the day, you're at work to make as much money as possible and not deal with these type of people. Stick to technical careers or discussions, right? If you're working in the STEM type of industry, science, tech, engineering, maths, certain type of corporate jobs, you can just revert any conversation that delves into politics back to that topic. Avoid substances, alcohol at work. You don't want to be drinking alcohol at work because it could put you in a compromising position. If you don't remember the evening before when you're drinking alcohol with co-workers, you never know, they might make up a completely fake story and then you don't remember whether it happened or not because you were drinking. The same thing when it comes to avoiding other substances like drugs and things like that. Be cautious with HR. Understand that HR is always going to be on the side of the woman, not on your side. I've dealt with many cases I've seen where a woman in the office and HR have a very close contact, female HR. So they're always gossiping. They always know every little detail of people's personal lives, which guy's popular, which guy's not popular, or what your opinions may or may not be based on how you react to things, even if you keep your opinion to yourself and you're not vocally supporting every feminist narrative. And the other thing is focusing on your purpose, right? You're at work, of course, to make money, or you're at college or university where you can also get cancelled for studying, right? So you've got to be on guard at all times. And your purpose is a lot deeper, right? Your purpose could be providing money for your family to live. It could be your purpose to live off grid, retire early, all these type of things. So try to keep that in the forefront of your mind when you're dealing with these toxic people who've really ruined the work environment. Next thing is around strategic precautions. Attend with third party if possible. For example, when Mike Pence would attend work dinners in the evening, he would attend with his wife, so there was a witness, or other co-workers or witnesses. I remember a co-worker at an investment bank who would take, after a Christmas party, there was a female co-worker who got drunk, and of course if women are strong and independent they should take care of themselves, but again, never-ending double standard, lack of accountability and responsibility for them that society covers up for. So she was too drunk to go home, so a male co-worker took a taxi with her to take her to a house. And he told us later that she made a move on him, right? Now, this is the type of thing that would put you at massive risk. I would never do that. Let the female co-worker who's making a lot more money than me, she was constantly getting promoted, let her go and take care of it herself. I'm not here to take care of her. It's her problem if she's drunk. She's passed out on the street. That's her fault, right? She should know better. So this is the type of things that will put you at risk. So just avoid being a gentleman and taking responsible for female co-workers. Document everything, of course, before and after interacting with them. I remember an instance several years ago where KSI, who's a bit like Logan Paul in the UK, just before KSI became super popular, he's already popular, had millions of followers, but before, he did things like Prime and the fight and the boxing fight with Logan Paul and more media coverage and more mainstream content. Just before that, there was a woman who accused him of something, that he did something inappropriate to her. And I always think, just before he was about to hit the big time, this happened. Similar to Brett Kavanaugh in a sense. What ended up happening is she had accused him of assaulting her or whatever. So then he actually went through his text messages and he pulled out the text messages after they were meeting for several days after that. And that's the only thing that protected him. So what could have taken away millions and millions and millions of dollars from him of these future opportunities would be that one instance of a woman accusing him. But it thankfully had the evidence after they had spent the night together, evidencing he didn't do anything inappropriate, which saved him several years later. So these are the things to look out for. Now, keep your strategy silent. Your male co-workers, they're not on your side. They're going to mock you. They think you're being too cautious. They're going to ridicule you. They're going to see you as being MRA, men's right activist, or your MG going your own way, a man going their own way, or your red pill, or whatever. They'll try to mock you for this, so just don't share it with them. If you're keeping yourself to yourself and protecting yourself, just keep your strategy silent. Be careful around these type of beta orbiters, simps, men in mainstream society. They're agents of the system. They're agents of simping, however you want to describe it. They're really an agent of the state. They're like Agent Smith in the Matrix, right? They kind of reinforce the system. So they're going to think you're an idiot because you have a smart strategy to protect yourself, right? They're clueless and naive. It's not your role to save the kind of idiot liberal bugman soy boy at work. And then the other point here is around keeping your personal life, right? Personal from your profession. You don't have to tell female co-workers who you're dating, what's going on in your life or with your wife. She might stalk you. She might investigate what's going on in your personal life through social media. And also, when you are dating women outside of work, you don't have to tell them exactly where you work, what your job is. Because say you go on a date with a woman and she finds out certain personal details around you, and then she doesn't like the fact that you rejected her or that you ended a relationship, casual relationship with her. She might go to your employer and try to say you harassed her, or you're a negative guy, or you're misogynist, whatever. So you don't have to give up all this personal information to everyone you interact with, particularly when you're in a mega city. You don't know people, one person from the other, you can't tell. Everyone has strangers. Don't apply your morals to others thinking other people have your morals. They can be quite negative, right? So just be really careful. You're going on a random date with a random woman you met on a dating app. Don't tell her where you work. You can just say, oh, you work in finance. You don't even have to name the company. You don't have to go into too much detail, right? And the same thing when it comes to your personal life, right? If you have certain personal social media accounts, you can have it under anonymous names, use a different phone, because sometimes people have their personal phone and they give that number to their company where they work, where essentially that will be your emergency contact number, right? Or your secondary contact number. And if your personal phone number is linked to your Twitter account or linked to other social media, you might have controversial views through anonymous accounts, that could be linked back to your employer, and they might find that identified through finding phone numbers matched with that particular account. So you've got to be careful on how you handle these particular strategies. Now let's talk about alternative career strategies, right? You need to consider self-employment, right? If you're really unhappy with these type of dynamics, consider self-employment to avoid the politicized affirmative action workplace that promotes women often over qualified men, and consider why you should invest time and effort into a system that is highly risky and doesn't reward meritocracy. In many cases, the future for successful men is outside corporate America. I've made some videos on this you can check out on my channel. You could be a solo independent contractor, engaged in outsourced work from remote companies. Of course, those opportunities are more rare. You have to be very skilled at your job and be more experienced, but it's an opportunity to consider being a company of one and doing your own thing. And then you won't have to deal with complaints. You're not in the office. You can cut off toxic clients if they're being negative with you. You're your own boss. You can fire your clients. They can't really fire you in a sense. It's not like you're working for a company with one source of income. If you have multiple clients, one's being difficult, you can cut them off or just politely end the client relationship and find other clients, right? So I hope you found that helpful. We've been talking through quite a lot here, right? We went through Russell Brand, Brett Kavanaugh, what you can learn from them to protect yourself, and also these kind of key type of risks to look out for, red flags to look out for, how to protect yourself, how to play the defensive game, understanding the environment, identifying and avoiding risks, mitigating risks at work or college, being strategic in your precautions, and having alternative career strategies. So this is really helpful for you to learn. I was someone who has worked for over a decade in the finance industry at Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, many other top banks, studied at LSE, and I've seen many of these scenarios firsthand. I offer a career advice service. There is a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. I'll be happy to help you. Let me know in the comments how you feel about protecting yourself at work. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.